week, as I was reading through Galatians 4, I was reminded of the old classic kids movie, The Brave Little Toaster. I know, bear with me. If you are under the age of 30 and you've never heard of The Brave Little Toaster, just think Toy Story 3. It's pretty much the same exact plot. Anyway, it is about a group of misfit household appliances living in a cabin who are waiting for their master to come back so they will have purpose and companionship again. They wait and wait in anticipation, and then one day a for sale sign goes up and they lose all hope that he'll ever be back for them, and they set off on a dangerous journey on their own to find him. Little did they know, their owner was driving back to the cabin to get them before he went away to college. So they embark on this harrowing adventure full of angry air conditioning units and evil clowns. I think I'm still scared from when I was a child. And their master ends up having to rescue them from certain doom. Not unlike Jesus. Come to think of it, there are a lot of spiritual parallels in The Brave Little Toaster, I'm just saying. But the point is, if they had only just waited a little longer, if they had only kept the faith instead of taking matters into their own hands, they would have avoided the whole debacle. And this is basically what Paul is getting at in Galatians 4. He uses the example of Abraham. God promised him a son, and he starts seeing his hair getting grayer and grayer, and he starts questioning if God's ever going to keep his promise. And he starts to say to himself, in order to bring about God's promise, I'm going to have to start taking matters into my own hands, and I'm going to have to sleep with another woman. And he does. And I think most of us probably would agree that the best way to bring about God's abundant life is not to deliberately sin. But in some ways, this is exactly what we do when we are faced with having to wait for blessings. Now, I know, I get it. I have been there too. And as Tom Petty says, the waiting is the hardest part. Sometimes a hard no and a closed door is easier to deal with than a partially open door and a whole lot of waiting. But if we'd only just hang on, keep the faith, and trust that God is cooking up something great, we could save ourselves a whole lot of heartbreak. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a time for action. But when taking action looks like cutting corners or settling for less than God's best, or deliberately doing what we know we shouldn't, that is not an action that will bring about God's abundant life any quicker. And I don't know what you might be waiting for. Maybe you want to be successful in business, but it's not happening as quickly as you thought. So you're considering cutting some corners or treating people unfairly in order to get where you think you should be quicker. Maybe you think you should be married by now, so you're willing to settle for less than God's best for you. Or maybe you're waiting for healing or for a job or for a dream to come true. Whatever it is, stay strong, have faith. The Master is coming for you. And Paul makes it very clear in this passage that we are not descendants of the slave woman that Abraham slept with. We are not members of the take matters into our own hands family. We are members of the God is faithful to fulfill his promise family. You see, the Galatians were not trusting God's promise, and they were attempting to bring out their own righteousness by choosing to live under the law instead of freedom in Christ. So this week, let's not be like little toasters who are worried that the Master has forgotten us. Let's instead be people full of patience and faithfulness that God will fulfill his promise. Let's not take things back into our own control because it's not happening as fast as we'd like. After all, if the matters are in God's hands, then that's the best place for them to be.